So that was a great blessing to get to know James and be working with him all these years to bring probably what was the first. Am I on? Is that connecting? Is that working? Yeah. Probably what was the first missionary from Russia to the United States. And it was a musical missionary. Konstantin Zhigul and this brother had been writing, various music over the years. And about 30 years ago, started writing hymns for singing in a cappella in Russia, and based on the Psalms and based on the Scriptures, and very simple to sing or even learn in one setting. And about 20 years ago, in our Bible Institute, Mark Shipp, who was over teaching, and Todd Hall, also from San Marcos, from Holland Street, and they sang, the group, Constantine, the others sang some hymns for them at their going away party. And I think it was Mark, I don't know, Mark or maybe Todd Hall said, wouldn't that be great to bring them to the States? And I said, that will never happen. Who's going to listen to Russians singing in Russian in America? Well, they have made now, I don't know what, 10 or so trips. It all started about then. And about 75, I guess, maybe of his hymns now have been translated into English. And they've led worship at, from as far away as ACU and Freed Hardeman and Pepperdine and Oklahoma Christian and everywhere in between at different lectureships. And I don't know, Brentwood, we sang probably 2 or 3 of them regularly. And of course, they're used all over Russia, all over the Ukraine. He has a great ministry of teaching worship. And when you worship with him, or when he teaches, you worship. You don't just sing whatever, right? So that's been a great blessing, and that's kind of how I know James, right? So how we've been acquainted over the years. So I moved there. I became a Christian as an adult when I was about 24 years old. I never went to church 3 times in my life before that, for a wedding, a funeral, and a baptism of a baby, probably, in the Methodist church. So at university, I met some people when I was studying, and then after that, a variety of things happened, and I ended up at Brentwood Oaks, where I was baptized, and we were married, and we were sent out to do the work in Russia 30 years ago now. We were there for 25 years. 3 years ago with the war, we had to come back. So we did a variety of things. We were blessed to do a variety of things, from planting churches all over Russia, really, to starting the Bible Institute and Training Center, which is still going on now. And then the last decade or so, I've been doing more training evangelists, training leaders, and pastoral care, helping little churches, not unlike this, to many of which all over Russia, to care for each other by knowing their gifts and using their gifts to minister to each other, where there's not one preacher or teacher or minister. So that's kind of what we've been doing. The last few years, I've been helping also with what's called Next Generation for Christ. And we're going to read here, right, from Psalm 78. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob, established law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. And they would tell their children's children. So you see that even from the Old Testament, you kind of have this idea that the people of God were supposed to be holy and dedicated to God, and so different from the culture around them, but that was supposed to be attractive. And we see moments like that where the Queen of Sheba comes up and has heard about Solomon, right? But in general, the Israelites did not do a great job at that, right? So the nations were not streaming to Israel as much. But you see the kind of call to go out and be that person is already there in the Old Testament. And of course, we see that emphasis on the New Testament on going out and being the people. So if the Old Testament was more shine the light and they will come to you, the New Testament is more as be the light as you're going out, as you're living, right? So the ministry is called Next Generation for Christ. Pretty basic strategy there to seek and serve and share the gospel. Now, if I ask you what the gospel is, what's the gospel? I love asking this question in churches. What is the gospel? Good news. Great. So that's y'all are already ahead of some churches that say, even churches of Christ, or especially maybe churches of Christ, that say it's to hear, to believe, to repent, and be baptized. And I say, no, that's not the gospel, but that is the correct response biblically to the gospel, right? So we have to know the message, right? What is good news? Good news about what? So Alan McNichol, one of our professors at ICS, Institute for Christian Studies, challenged us to summarize the gospel in one sentence or in one paragraph. And I remember brightly that time that I was new Christian, working, I think, at a rent-a-car place, very busy. Suddenly, we had no one in the office, which is very strange for us. And our manager turns to me and she says, "Why do you believe in Jesus?" And I think what she really meant was, and we'll get to this in a minute, is, what has God ever done for you, really? And I didn't have anything to say. I had a great opportunity. I was a new Christian, had nobody else in the office. She asked me a direct question, and I had nothing to say. I thought that should never happen again. And we may not have an hour, we may not have weeks with them, we may not have 30 minutes, but we need to have something to say that, communicates the message of the gospel, which saves people, but also our testimony. What is it that God has done for us, right? Sometimes people want to start with that. So what has God done for you? And this is not a scary place to be anymore, where before you had this scientific materialism that, if you weren't scientific, that's stupid, and I'm not going to listen to you, right? You get that a lot. Where now you're kind of in this, and we are in Russia and everywhere in Europe, this kind of postmodern telling the story where there's no objective truth, and that's not scary because there are competing stories of reality. And we have a story. So when you talk to people now, they say, "What's your story?" Okay, that's equally valid with that story. Well, at least you get a hearing. Now we can say, "This is our story. What's your story?" This is a story. And so that's very much like how the church exploded in growth in the early centuries, right? Because there were competing stories of reality, and we had the true story, right? But you had a hearing. Where after the Enlightenment and that scientific period, you didn't really have a way to talk to people if you weren't talking with them about science or reasoning from science. So I think that's a great opportunity. Something we shouldn't be scared of. We should actually be happy about that. So our strategy of the next generation for Christ is to seek, like Jesus said, to seek and serve. Send us out to fish for people and to share. So I want to look at what this means exactly. He says, "I've come to seek and save the lost. I've come not to be served, but to serve." Right? And then we share with people as we go out and tell them the gospel. So, what do these things mean? So I want to ask you, how do you seek for people? Do you seek people? Do people seek you? How does that work for you? What does that mean to seek? Jesus said, "I've come to seek and save the lost." So how is he seeking, and how do you seek? Probably turn that back for a moment there. Yeah. What are you doing when you seek? It might be your grandchildren. It might be your children. It might be your grandchildren. It might be other people you know or you work with or old friends.
You're looking for an opportunity to teach
Mm-hmm.
or to share.
Yeah, it's on your mind, right? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be out there that, okay, I might be on this airplane or at this airport or, wherever I am in line at the DMV for hours, or wherever you go. That's on your mind, and you're thinking about that, and you're praying about it, right? So, paying attention, I think, is the key right there. Actually looking around, paying attention, to people around us, right? And then also we seek when we were praying about that. We're actively thinking about, Lord, show me or help me to find people or see the people you bring into my path or bring people into my path that I can share with, right? So when you think about that in the case of, Paul asked specifically the churches in Colossians, pray for me, pray for the evangelist, pray for me to have boldness or clarity, really, to speak the gospel to wherever he was, in prison, or a variety of places he was. Give me clarity, give me boldness. So it's prayer, right, and opportunities. But, he saw opportunity everywhere, right? So for specific people, for open hearts, in Romans, let's say it's 9 or 10:1, where he says, I pray for my heart's desire and my prayer for my brothers, the Israelites, is that they would come to know Christ, right? So he's praying for open hearts, right? He's praying for opportunities, praying for open hearts, and he's asking other people, pray with me or pray for me for the boldness, for the clarity to explain that. So we serve, most churches are really good at serving, right? UA has been for years, they've been down there feeding the homeless, right? And they're doing a little bit different now. They're actually engaging them in conversation as they're eating and trying to get to know them, because a lot of these are working poor, right, that actually need some kind of help budgeting and help to get off that cycle, not just paying their bills or whatever. But churches are often very good at serving. We serve a variety of things, giving out backpacks when school starts, right? Or, financial and different services, or counseling, or a variety of things like that, right? So, as we are, kind of paying attention, seeking, praying about that, then God's going to bring us opportunities. He's going to bring people into our lives that we can serve. Or sometimes we might be serving people or serving a community. Disasters that flood, horrible flooding in this year, what was July, right? And I was in Europe at that time when, in Kerrville, it was awful. I mean, I grew up in Fredericksburg. I mean, I've been to that, haven't been to those camps, but I've been on that river certainly, right? And so it was wonderful opportunities to serve, and then you realize, okay, there's people seeking here that don't know Jesus yet we could share with. So, sometimes the seeking comes before the serving, sometimes the serving before the seeking. It doesn't really matter, but you see all this throughout the New Testament. There's people seeking, Paul with the prayer group that were already seeking, right? In Acts chapter 16, Lydia and her women's prayer group, right? That didn't know the gospel. And then, sometimes churches will stay right there. Okay, we're going to serve, we're going to be God's people, we're going to help people, we're going to serve, and we're not really thinking maybe entirely, or maybe even at all, about how can we seek, or how can we share the gospel. What's the next step with these people we're serving or gotten a relationship with, right? And sharing is, there's two parts to the sharing, as I mentioned earlier, right? The facts of the gospel. What would you, if I said for homework, and I have 3 children, so I'm big about homework, homework and all that stuff. And when I teach and preach, sometimes I'll give homework because Russians really, respond to that. So, I gave you a homework, to come back next week or whenever I'm here again and say, what is the gospel in one sentence? What is the gospel message in one paragraph? Do you know that so well that you could share that if you're in a position like I was with your boss who asked you a very direct question and you don't have an answer for it? And that's terrible. I still feel terrible about that. That was 30 years ago. I feel terrible about that. I said some kind of nonsense. I don't know what it was. And then the customers all came back and all the employees came back and we lost the opportunity, right? So in your hearts, for fear of Christ as Lord, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason, for the hope that you have. Do this with gentleness and respect, So the facts of the gospel are important. Think through, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul sums up the gospel, right? Jesus, died, was buried, was raised and ascended and ruling, right? Died, God so loved the world that he gave his only son. Whoever believes in him might be saved and have eternal life, right? So there are different ways that we can sum that up in one sentence or one phrase. I appreciate Al Nickel making us do that. And in your testimony, what is God doing for you? What has he done for you? What is he doing now, right? And people want to know that, and they often want to start with that. Why do you believe in God? What does that look like? And then you have the opportunity there to say, well, this is what I believe, this is what the Bible says, this is where I get it from, right? There's a way to do this in person and online, at church, in groups, and one-on-one. And that's what we're going to look at here in a moment here. So some of you probably remember the Joel Miller film strips, right? I never saw them, but I've heard about them, right? Because I didn't become a Christian until 91, 92, right? But I've heard about those. What was the goal of the Joel Miller film strips?
To show people the steps of salvation.
Right, to share the gospel with them, right? You know, what is the gospel and how do you respond to it? Exactly, right? And who was supposed to do that? Or who could do that? Or who was doing that with the Joel Miller film strips?
Whoever says the film?
Yeah, anyone could do that, right? It didn't take a Bible scholar or a preacher or an evangelist or some really educated person to do that. And it was something that pretty much anyone can do. You know, anyone can pray, anyone can pay attention, can serve, and so the next step was he was trying to say was anyone can and should, he would say, as well do that. There's something that really you can get to know your friends. It was a cool, modern, innovative way to do that at that time, right? Now, I haven't met her personally, but I was in a church in Alabama, a Central Church of Christ in Huntsville, where Julie Miller is, I don't know how old she is now, but she saw these films that we do, and she said, well, this is a modern version of what my dad did. And it's the same goal, the same purpose, more modern, of course, and maybe a little bit of doctrinal emphasis, maybe a little bit different. But so this is what's called the Story of Redemption, and these are video. We'll watch one in a moment. They are 5 minutes long, and it's a gospel message. Love and creation, the God of grace. It's about Noah, and about sin, obviously Adam and Eve, sin and the grace of God. What it's like for Abraham here to follow God. Do I have a pointer? Right there, Abraham. Right? And his trials of faith, following God, was not always easy for him. Then the incarnation about Jesus, his life, his ministry, birth, life, ministry, death, resurrection. Right? And then what it means to follow. It's very interesting. It's kind of like The Chosen in one video right here. What is it like to follow? What does it mean to follow Jesus? Right? And the road to the cross, his, what he went through, his crucifixion, his death, his suffering, and resurrection from the dead and new life, and what it means to follow Christ. And these are, you see there's 8 series. Each lesson here has about 4 points. So you have 8 times 4 is 32. So if lesson 1 has 4 5-minute videos. That could be one lesson where you watch 20 minutes of video and talk about things, or it could be 4 lessons. It depends on where the person is, right? So you have, they're short. People like that today because they're not long. They're not going to watch an hour-long video. Now, they're watching what? They're watching cat videos, right? Or dog videos on their phones, And even the phone screen is, if I see that I've got to scroll a couple times, I think that's way too long. I can't read that. And you look at it on a computer, and it's like one paragraph. It's like nothing, right? So unhappily, it's kind of where people are unhappily or whatever. That's where people are today. So this kind of speaks to that it is a lot of content, good biblical content, presented in a creative, interesting way that keeps their attention, right? So that's an hour. Each lesson is about an hour and 15 minutes. Short video, scripture, 3 or 5 discussion questions. And this was done, he wrote this because James Norris, a friend of mine, grew up at Oklahoma Christian, going on LST trips, sharing the gospel as a teen already with his family. And when he started to preach in Kansas City and Dallas and different places, he didn't have any good material to share the gospel with people who really didn't know Christ yet. Either it was very dated, or it was very cool and modern, but it wasn't very biblical. So he's like, I need to maybe create something myself. So these lessons were actually just PDF. They were printed, then they were PDF, right? Electronic, and then now they're video, so it combines all that, right? So, again, that's English. That's what you have before you, 1.1 in English. The first video, we'll watch that in a moment. So you have it right in front of you. You can see what it's like. That is the same thing in Spanish, and in Portuguese, and Farsi. We have 70 different languages. So that's the second page you have here. It's going to be just the second page. You should have two. Yeah, back there. Yeah, the second page has the flags on it. Those are going to be the study groups that are going on during the week in different nations. And most of that is in English, but some of them has English and translation. And these are the times. It's organized by day of the week and by time. So you may have friends in a certain country, or you may know people, or you may have been somewhere, right? As this brother mentioned, he was in Russia, St. Petersburg, a couple years ago, right? And you may already have a way to do that. You may already have a connection there or some interest in that part of the world, right? So let's go ahead and watch that video right now, James. We'll go ahead and see what it looks like. Now, it's very basic. It's very, very basic. This starts from the very beginning. Love, creation. And it starts out with some hard questions about why is there suffering and death and things like that. So let's go ahead and watch that video. And so this is an example of what the lesson you have in front of you, the very first one, 5-minute video, and you can see the scripture, and you can see the questions, you'll see the quality, and you'll see what it looks like. Guys, these are 5-7 minutes long. Turn it up a little bit. Hit pause right quick. Pause. So, pause it. Or actually, you can let it go. Go ahead and play it. I'll talk over it for a second. Music at the beginning here. So, this is subtitles in English audio. This could literally have anything from Chinese.
Whenever we're seeking God,
Russian,
a lot of questions
Spanish,
come to mind,
Portuguese, etc.
such as who is God and what is He
sometimes.
like?
And many,
Where do
many
we
languages
come
also
from?
have voiceover.
And why do we
in their own
exist?
language.
And if there is a God, why is there so much pain and evil and suffering in the world? And on a personal level, does God have a plan for my life? My first year in ministry, I was serving with a group of Christ followers as a minister in a church. And there was a young girl in the group named Chelsea. And she was the sweetest, kindest little girl. And we found out one evening that she had leukemia. And just 2 days later, she passed away. And I can remember going through her notebook, and it was just God saturated, filled with thoughts and questions and poems about God. And she asked me to speak at her funeral, something no little girl ought to ever have to do. And it drove me to ask some of these same questions again. And so I went back to the Bible, looking for answers. The Bible is a big book, filled with a lot of smaller books. But overall, it tells just one story, a story of faith, hope, and love, and ultimately, a story of redemption. The Bible begins with a book called Genesis, which is a word which means beginning. And the opening words of the Bible are profound. This is what it says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. I love science and learning. When I was 12, I received a telescope for my birthday, and I loved looking up at the stars and the moon and thinking about the universe. When I was in college, I received a biology degree, and I was even accepted into medical school. So I believe in science, and science has helped tremendously improve our lives and helped us make some amazing discoveries. Scientific explanations have helped us understand much about the world. The scientific theories about the origin of life all begin with the earth, water, and amino acids. But where did these things come from? The Big Bang Theory says that the universe began with a superheated ball of mass which exploded, providing a scientific explanation for how the universe came to be expanding, which it certainly is. But the question I always had was, where did the superheated ball of mass come from? You see, these theories all assume creation. They do not explain the ultimate origin of things. That is why for me, whenever I've doubted my faith, I've always come back to this. This world and this universe had to come from somewhere. And for me, that means that there must be a God. And that has profound implications for my life. Of course, today the question is, which God? Now, there are a lot of faiths out there. Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, the New Age movement, and Christianity. How do we know which one is the right one? That's a good question. But for now, just encourage us to examine the biblical account and see if it doesn't ring true and well describe our world as we know it. According to the biblical account, God created the land and the seas, the plants and the trees, the sun and the moon, the creatures of the sea, and the birds in the air, and the creatures that crawl upon the ground. And there was a pattern in this creation. Each time that God created something, God saw that it was good. So what do you think? What do you think of this biblical account? And what evidence do you see that points towards a creator of the universe?
So that's it. 5-7 minutes. I think that was a little bit longer than usual, 7 or 8 minutes, but very basic. And it goes all the way into, sin. The next one is about Adam and Eve. And Noah filmed at the Ark, there in Kentucky, right? Right, and about grace also. Everything from being filmed in the Garden of Gethsemane, about the temptation, and about the betrayal at night, so filmed in Israel and Egypt and a lot of these different places. That cross where he was standing and said to Christianity, that's the memorial on the Good Samaritan on the Jericho Road. That was a dangerous road then, especially a dangerous road now. So for a lot of young people also say, hey, this is not some fairy tale or some story. These are real places, real historical places. And that's cool. So you watch that video either one-on-one, in a group, in person or online. And then you have this study guide, a PDF or printed out, whatever language. So you read the text again with the text he wrote, right? And look at it. And then you have several questions. You have some vocabulary words if you're helping them with their English. If they come for English conversational practice, we're doing that because they're hearing, they're reading, they're conversing, and they're learning new vocabulary. And so it is that also. You can do that part of it. But the discussion questions, there's usually 5. And for the questions here, as you can see, are what questions have you had about God or faith? If you could ask God a question, what would it be? If you're talking to people who don't really know Jesus yet, they have a lot of questions for God. So do we, usually. That can be an interesting question. What do you think of this girl? This girl that died from cancer. Of course, this is an actress, this girl. But it was in Oklahoma City about 20 years ago where that happened. I've been in that church and talked to the people about it. Very, very, meaningful. And those kind of things happen. Why do those things happen? People have those questions. And what does that have to do with God or faith? What are some ways that science has helped our lives? That's great. What are some things that science struggles to answer? That's where you ask a book of philosophy or metaphysics, the Bible, scientific questions. You're not always going to get an answer, although you often do, right? Or if you ask science, metaphysical or questions of meaning, philosophical, science can't give you that answer. So it's asking the right questions of the right subjects. So that kind of helps to dispel the false, I think false belief really, that science is in conflict with the Bible or the Bible with science. What are some things in the world that are good? Everyone likes to complain and focus on what's bad, right from the media in the morning, in the newspaper or whatever. You know, whatever media you're looking at is what went wrong, right? It says what's good in life and helps us think about what's good and where does that come from? What is the source of that good, right? Then what do you see? And every video will end with, and what about you? What do you think? It's very open. It's inviting conversation, right? And so I'll finish here because I know we need to get on, but this is my share. So that's kind of what the lessons look like, what you do, each one, right? Something happened here. Can you go to the next slide, James? Yeah, that's what we just went through that. Yeah. Takes about an hour. Next slide. Yeah, go back. Again, yeah. So that's my son. He was baptized about 2 years ago. He was 16, and he wanted to go through the whole series. And he knows James. We've worked together, and he's been to a camp. But we want to go through the whole series, answer every question, read every text, watch every video, just to make sure he understood fully before he was baptized into Christ. And he grew up in the church. I did not, but he did. Go on. And, you know, that's what he said about it. He said, young people, he said, it's cool. You know, it's short videos. It's to the point, and it asks me for my opinion. It takes me seriously and asks me questions. So that's what he liked about it. Next slide. So yeah, these are a couple sisters, and there's a lot of these in the second page there with the flags on it. A lot of these lessons are, you know, led by, participate in, you know, older people. And often think, what can I do for God? What can I do for the gospel? Well, during the pandemic, when this hit, we were already online video. We already had Zoom actually back before the pandemic. I'd never heard about it, but we were already doing that. And so when the pandemic came, it was okay, we just can't travel anymore. So these sisters, this is a group in Kenya, a group in Colombia, and then we have one I do several studies during the week with some older folk that are just literally at home, right? On Zoom, if you can click play, open a Zoom link, turn on your camera, you can do these lessons. And then these lessons also, you know, if you can literally hit play, ask a few questions, and read a text, you can do it. So sometimes you might want to just hang out first and then kind of see how it goes. And then you can actually maybe lead a group or be a participant, answer questions. But you're talking live to people all throughout the world and some here locally that don't know Christ yet. So it's a great way to get some experience. So these are just some of the groups I participate in each week. That's a Vietnamese group that is about 40 people sometimes. This is a Spanish-speaking group here, Spanish-English. That's my Russian group on Mondays right there. This is a Farsi group on Thursdays, Farsi speakers, Afghans and Iranian. We're going to have dinner with them tomorrow, this couple. And we did some Facebook advertising right in the area. So we had this group, this Farsi-speaking group, she's in Las Vegas, in Dallas. She's in Austin. They're in Austin. And she's, I think, in Atlanta. So I looked at their phone number and I said, y'all are like right here at 737. Where do y'all live? I mean, they're right here on 183 and Olin Road. This couple of Afghan refugees. So we met them online first, and then in person over at Panera. Then they invited us over for an amazing Afghan dinner, sitting on the floor and the whole thing. It was unbelievable. It's great. She's a doctor, and he's a cybersecurity guy. They fled the Taliban, not Christians, nominal Muslims. Didn't think I'd have anything in common with them, and we felt like we knew each other our whole life, you know. So again, these studies kind of give opportunities to meet people not only across the world or across the country, but even locally, right? So these are Ukrainian refugees right there. And that is a group in Kenya. And that's a one-on-one study I have with a brother in Lithuania that I know that's not yet Christian, right? You can do it in 5 weeks, 12, 16, 32, whatever, internationally or locally. And it's the same document you have, the second document that has the different studies that we already have going on throughout the week, right? This is like Monday, Tuesday, all the way through Saturday at different times of the day, right? With different languages. And most of these are going to be, with an English component. So they're going to be translated, or they're going to all be speaking English already. And a vast majority of these people are not yet Christians, right? So that's a little bit about the story of redemption, that, what we do, what it is. And I say it's kind of a modern Joel Miller film strips. And it allows people to connect from all around the world, right? So we have, like I say, on Mondays I have Russians and Ukrainians, 2 separate groups. Tuesdays, Lithuanians, these are Baltic countries. Latvians on Wednesdays, the Afghans and Iranians on Thursdays, and another Russian couple on Fridays, Saturdays. And that's just me. It's what I'm personally participating in. But if you look at our whole team, we have different people in different parts of the world, everywhere from Kenya to Brazil to the Spanish-speaking world, which includes not only Mexico but here locally, and a lot of different places, and Chinese language, and just a variety of things. So we have all those videos have it at 70 different languages. So you might have Spanish audio and English subtitles, for example. Different ways to do that, but it's literally, if you can get on a Zoom meeting, you've probably been on a Zoom meeting in your life, or 2, or 10, or ad nauseum. That's what you can do this either in person, in a group, in a small group, in a Bible class, or actually from your own home, right? Participate in that. So that's a way that more and more people are able to share the gospel and learn, practice, learn, meet new people, And I was like, I don't have anything in common. I don't know anything about Islam or with Muslims, or I don't know the language, and I don't know anything about that. I can speak fluently to Russians. And I know some German. My family's German, a little German, but I don't know anything about Farsi speakers. And the first week, one of the people in there, she was didn't turn her camera on. She was real suspicious. And I don't know if I'm going to come back to this thing. And by week 3, she was in tears about how meaningful it had become to her. I think partially because there were men in the group listening to her and respecting her opinion and letting her talk, partially. So there's a cultural moment to it. But she was able to investigate in a safe environment online. Sometimes people will come online before they come in person. And sometimes they might be coming in person, but they want more during the week. So there's a wide variety of things. So that's what you're free is to and be, get involved in. You can let me know if you're interested in that. It is a great, life-giving way to enliven your faith, to learn some skills, to talk to people, to listen to people, and sometimes you might even get to meet them if you're locally like we did, and we're looking forward to that tomorrow. It's our turn to cook them, Ali and Shirin from Afghanistan, a Russian dinner we're going to have tomorrow. So we're not going to sit on the floor. But they told us that we could sit on the table if you're. We said, let's sit on the floor. That's how you do it, right? And so you're able to, he's looking for a different job as a cybersecurity guy. She's finishing her medical degree. So there's ways you can serve and get to know them as well, and others. So that's what we're doing. That's what I've been doing about the last 10 years of our work. So that, when we had to leave Russia suddenly, wasn't really an issue, right? For us, because I just continued doing that from where I am. So it's been wonderful to be here. I'll give you a break there. I guess we're worshiping soon. But let us know if you're interested. Thanks. Sure. Yeah. Hey, Mark. Yeah, my contact number's at the bottom there.